Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chapter 2 of BUS 201, Business Communication. And in this chapter, we're going to be talking about communicating in teams and mastering listening and nonverbal communication skills. Now, whenever you're working in companies, you're going to see a lot of teamwork, people working together to make decisions, solving problems, and so on. So, what are some advantages of teamwork and some disadvantages? So the strengths of working in teams are, first of all, we have increased information and knowledge. Obviously, there's a saying that two heads are better than one. So when you have multiple people working together, you have more knowledge, more skills. And also, when you have a lot of people, there's more diversity, more viewpoints. You might not know how to solve a problem, but someone else might. So that's a benefit of teamwork. And also increase performance levels because of synergy. When you're working with someone else, that person complements your performance. And in the end, you perform better than what you would have done if you were working all by yourself. However, there are some disadvantages of teamwork as well. First of all, we have groupthink, which is a common opinion. For example, if you're part of a team and if everyone feels a particular way, then you have no option but to feel that particular way as well. So you decide that whatever they say is right, even if it is actually wrong, or if you disagree with them. So you're just following the herd mentality. That is what groupthink is. Some team members might also have hidden agendas, personal motives, which can influence their decisions. So in this case, they might not see the benefit of the group, but rather their own benefit. Free riders are people who don't contribute equally to the teamwork, but they're just riding along. This puts a disproportionate amount of pressure on the other team members. Obviously, we don't want free riders in work teams. And the high costs come from aligning and coordinating the group activities. For example, arranging meetings, arranging the venue, the location, and all the other variable costs associated with the meeting. That is always going to be there. So these are strengths of teams and these are weaknesses of teamwork. Effective teams have a clear purpose. They have open communication channels between all its team members. There's creative thinking process. There is a focus on consensus decision making, which basically stands for group decision making. There is focused efforts among the team members. And lastly, there's an effective process of conflict resolution. That means problem solving. So here, we're going to teach you how to prepare for meetings. It starts with having a purpose. Whenever you're wanting to arrange a meeting, you need a clear purpose in your head. What is the topic to be discussed in the meeting? Or what are the topics if there are multiple topics? Then next, you have to choose the participants. Who should participate in the meeting? Now, the selection of participants needs to be done very carefully. A rule of thumb is to only invite participants who are essential, who needs to be there. Extra people who are not essential might detract from the overall purpose of the meeting. We don't want that. Next, create an agenda. What is an agenda? Well, an agenda is a list of topics to be discussed in the meeting. It's different from the purpose because an agenda is like a itinerary. It tells you what are the topics, who are the participants, and it also gives a time slot, like what topic is going to be discussed at what time. For example, at 9 a.m. people arrive. At 9:15 we have refreshments. At 9:30 the chairperson opens the meeting. Then we have topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, and finally at 10 a.m. the meeting closes. That is an agenda. We'll talk about it more later. And finally, fix the location, the venue of the meeting. The location should be accessible to all the participants of the meeting. It should have proper ventilation and should be a place where people are comfortable and can express their opinions. All of these points that I've just talked about are mentioned in detail in this slide. As you can see here, select participants, choose a location, set and follow a agenda, and all the other details. Now, as you can see here, there are two types of meeting given here in broad. Informational meetings are meetings where participants share information and sometimes coordinate action. Decision-making meetings, on the other hand, are meetings where participants persuade, analyze, and solve problems. Now, the success of any meeting depends a lot on the leader. You see this person right here? This person is the chairperson. Now, who is the chairperson? A chairperson is a person who controls and organizes the meeting. Whoever calls the meeting is the chairperson. These are participants. Now, it's the chairperson's responsibility to ensure that we have focus, that the list of topics, the agenda, is being followed properly. It's also the chairperson's responsibility to ensure that we follow a proper procedure. Now, a common procedure for meetings is called parliamentary procedure, where everyone gets a say in the decision-making process. How does the leader ensure equal participation? Well, sometimes people are too talkative, they're talking too much, which is distracting. Sometimes people are too quiet and they're not participating enough. So the leader, the chairperson, needs to control this. He needs to encourage the quiet ones and maybe just tell the loud ones to cool down. And then ensure that the closing is done properly and cordially with a summary of the main topics which has been discussed in the meeting. And finally, the follow-up is where the chairperson creates and distributes the meeting minutes to all the members of the meeting. Now, what are the meeting minutes? Meeting minutes are notes, detailed notes of who said what in the meeting, and also the verdict reached. This is usually done by the secretary, but it can also be done by anyone in the meeting. It's important that the participants get a detailed minutes after the meeting finishes. The listening process is a very basic process which tells you what are the steps involved when someone listens to something, anything. It starts with receiving. you receive the sound, the signal, whatever it is that you're hearing. For example, you're listening to your friend talk to you. Interpreting is where you interpret what you've heard using the frame of reference which applies to you. Now, the frame of reference varies from person to person. The same thing can be interpreted differently by different persons. For example, if I say turnover, to a finance student, it might mean revenue and sales. But to an HR student, it might mean employees quitting or leaving the firm. So you see, it all depends on their frame of reference. So we need to understand what particular person's frame of reference is and then communicate accordingly. People remember automatically if they're paying attention. It's retained in their heads, in their memory, but you can also remember effectively by making notes. And then the fourth step, when you're evaluating what you have heard, you're using your judgment. You're using your critical judgment, and you're weighing the pros and cons of what you've just heard, separating fact from opinion. For example, if the speaker tells you a joke, you don't write that down. You know that it's a joke. You only write down the important stuff in a speech. That's evaluating. And finally, in responding, which once again, it might happen, it might not happen. If you understand everything, you might not respond. But this is the last step. You might have a question, you might not say anything, you might laugh, you might look at them intently, and so on. All of these are examples of responding. Barriers to listening are impediments, roadblocks which hamper effective listening. So prejudgment is when people have preconceived notions about what is being said. They have a prejudice, a bias. For example, if I believe that something is right, I will always have a prejudgment whenever I'm hearing something against that topic. We need to avoid prejudgment when we're listening. Self-centeredness is when the focus of everything is yourself and you refuse to believe otherwise. And you try to dominate and control the meeting or any kind of listening situation. We need to avoid that as well. Finally, selective listening is when you're listening to some parts of the speech, but not the whole thing. That is your daydreaming. Your mind is wandering. You're listening to bits and phrases of information, but you're not listening to the whole thing. We can avoid this by paying full attention. So these are some guidelines for effective listening. Find areas of interest, focus on content, hold your fire, that is, hold your aggression until the speaker has finished speaking. Listen for ideas and take selective notes. You might take a brief outline of the main points being discussed. That will help. Work at listening, block competing thoughts, paraphrase the speaker, stay open-minded, and stay ahead of the speaker. Whenever you're listening to something, you can forecast what the next topic might be. For example, if I'm listening to a teacher talk about finance, I might forecast that his next topic might be ratios or dividends. So that's stay ahead of the speaker.